Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Employers Advantage July Team Live recording, where today we're going to be talking about going back into the workplace. I know everyone's so excited to talk about that. Lots going on. I believe we have a new team member since our last recording, if I'm not mistaken. Miss Ellen Slane. Good morning,
Hello.
Ellen. And Candace, we're going to introduce Candace. I think she may have been on the last recording, but we just want to make sure she has a proper welcome. So, good morning, Candace, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you again.
So, good morning, everyone. Everyone's here. The gang's all here. So, if we're ready, we're going to jump right in and talk about going back into the workplace and employee engagement. So, as we talk about going back into the workplace, one of the things or topics that's been kind of a hot topic recently has been the reluctance of people going back into the workplace. So, we want to discuss that a little bit and kind of what do we feel is driving that. So, we'll start there. What do you feel is kind of creating that reluctance of workers returning to the workplace?
I think one of the main things that I'm seeing from a recruitment perspective when I'm talking with people is there is still this pandemic that's happening, and people are still a little worried about returning to work with people. I've had several candidates throughout my interview processes ask me, "What is the current situation? Are people vaccinated? Are people still wearing masks? What kind of setups are there? Am I sharing space with people? Am I breathing their air? What kind of air conditioners do you have?" There is still this worry about going back in with COVID still being a real issue.
I agree with Sandra that is definitely playing a part in people's reluctance to return to the office. Additionally, I think some people found a sweet spot for themselves. They found that they could be very productive at home, but also balance their family responsibilities and other responsibilities while still giving the company their best. So I think they found a better way and now are reluctant to go back to the previous life of going into the office and driving 45 minutes to an hour every day to do that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, as we talk about now working employees back into the workplace and having conversations, obviously there are a lot of different feelings about being back, and there's a lot that's changed since we were in the workplace previously. What are some of the ways that employers can begin the conversation around coping with some of those feelings or acknowledging some of those feelings, but still getting people back into the workplace and ramped up?
Got a client who is getting ready to do a survey before they go back into the workplace, which I think is a great idea. They're really taking the pulse of their employees so that they can try to accommodate and allay some of those fears prior to being back together. Asking questions like, do you want a hybrid work schedule? So how many days a week would you be comfortable with? What can we do to make you feel better about being in the office? And just a lot of really good open communication type questions, which is really valuable right now.
I had a client that did a survey as well, and it's useful because when they're discussing with the employees what their steps are going to be, they can say it's based partly on survey response and survey feedback. So if someone doesn't necessarily agree with it, they at least know that their counterparts do, that some of them do agree with it, and it's not the employer making decisions on an island. I also think because they get this feedback via survey, they can have one-on-one conversations with individuals as far as at least maybe flexibility with you, like you had said, Rachel, with hybrid, but also flexibility when they come back. It's summer. People might have children out of school that they've made arrangements for based on the current scenario. And so do we delay their return? Do we have staggered returns? I think in general, the survey allows them to then have one-on-one conversations with the individuals who might have given outline feedback or an outline response.
That's good.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
So if you need survey templates, we
There
can
go.
provide them.
Just to echo with, what some of the others were saying, depending on the size of your workforce, you may not be able to customize a return to work plan, but you can at least have the availability to identify,
you know, how you can make that return to work or return to office smoother and less stressful, because everybody is sort of up and down with their comfortableness with wanting to return to the office. So I think it's a great starting off point.
Yeah, I agree with Ellen. It also allows the HR team and the leadership team to provide FAQs or talking points to the managers that are having those direct conversations. So you can kind of take that survey information, even if you can't accommodate everybody's individual wants or requests, and say, hey, but this is how we're addressing this issue, and allow the managers to build that personal relationship with the employees to allow for more comfort as they come back into the office.
I have a question. So based off that, Candace, you brought up a good point. The managers, the leadership team, supervisors, you know, even frontline managers, whoever it is, how for them is managing employees different now, whether in a fully remote environment where they may not have been before or in a hybrid? How should they hone their managerial or leadership skills? Like, are they doubling down? What do you think people should do there?
I think they really have to be very strategic about communication and making sure that they are like allowing time for them to reach out to their employees. It's easier in the office. You can read people's body language, you see them in passing and may be able to ask questions that help you to resolve an issue more quickly. But when they're home, you can't see them. And so whether it's a hybrid schedule or a full remote schedule, leaders really have to be very thoughtful about, let me allot time to reach out. Let me make sure that I get on Zoom so I can see their face and see their facial expressions and really understand how I can support them in a better, more productive way.
Yeah, because I think that might be another transition that companies, small businesses in particular, are going to go through, because we saw in the beginning-ish of the pandemic when a lot of folks that could go remote went remote. And the number one question we were getting from our clients was, how do we keep the culture going? How do we maintain communication? I don't know what to do here. And it always came back to what you just said, was us letting the manager or the leadership know that this is your responsibility to be intentional and purposeful and proactive about creating that engagement in a remote environment and providing people with tools and resources to do that. And so in a hybrid role, you know, it's almost another transition of knowing who's in, who's out, and then how to communicate with each person based off of that. So just another transitioning piece.
And even like one of my clients has individuals on a staggered schedule. So you want to make sure you're avoiding a situation where people never work with some people. So being same thing with regard to being intentional and deliberate. So make sure there's some overlap with everyone, even if it's some one-off days, or then you end up with individuals who have interacted one-on-one in person and then those who haven't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shannon, kind of piggybacking off of that a bit, when we talk about overlap and people working in the office together, obviously now we know that there are vaccines and there's been a lot of conversation around vaccinations, who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated, those types of things. Are you seeing any shift, or is anyone seeing any shift in regards to the thoughts around PPE? Should PPE even be a thing now? Like, you know, how is all of that changing as people are going back to work?
Shannon.
No, it's the talk of the day. I didn't know if that was opened up to other people. It's the talk of the day. So all clients are taking different approaches, and they have to take into consideration, I know some combine visitors in the workspace as well. So how do they treat employees and then anyone else coming into the office? I think in general, we've recommended that we follow, or that our clients follow, CDC guidelines as far as those who are vaccinated and unvaccinated. To take it another level and require vaccination in order to be unmasked, that's something that's a discussion as well. And all of these things, you kind of need to sit down and talk through what's your end game, what's your overall objective, and how will your employees respond? What is your work environment? What does social distancing look like in your work environment? So these are just all things to consider. So when I have a client that's deciding what approach to take, it's just, we have to talk it through. And each situation might look a little different. And some of it depends on industry, the extent of face-to-face customer interaction. I have one client whose customers maybe turned away if they require masks for customers or clients. So we have to take each situation on a case-by-case basis. So I think that's where we've come in hand, where we've been helpful, because we can say, okay, let's have this conversation, start to finish. What does this look like? What does this look like for you? How can we cater this to you so that it's well received and so that it's safe? Obviously, individuals can opt to wear masks, whether or not they're vaccinated or unvaccinated. So individuals have that choice, and they should continue to have that choice. But in general, I've kind of defaulted to CDC, state and federal guidelines as a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been talking about this. Every client and every scenario is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what are managers now with people literally coming back into the building? What's the biggest difference or change that managers are facing as people are coming back into the building? What's kind of their biggest challenge, I guess, in working with employees? And then we'll build upon that. And what's been the biggest challenge you've heard your clients talk about as far as the employees, from the employees' perspective?
So I think
outside of not wearing their PJs to work anymore.
Yeah. But you know what? Maybe they couldn't stand the loose ends of old school dress codes.
That's true.
I mean, pajamas, maybe not, but anyway,
Sorry,
go ahead, Ellen.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, you're fine. And just some of the things that I've heard is that employees are now, there's the expectation of having to get back into that routine. As Candace had mentioned earlier, getting through that commute, getting up, putting pants on. And then also, there also is going to be, more expectations on them for accountability, because now they're in the office and their boss is just right down the hallway or just right around the corner. So the boss can now come in and check on them a lot easier versus, when they were working remotely. So there's definitely going to be a little bit of adjustment in that, coming virtual to in person. And also, I think specifically what I have experienced is that there's that lack of control is going away. So the employees working virtually, they can control their environment, their home environment, where they go, who they see, what they do, but they can't control their coworkers. And from a manager's perspective, you can control the environment that you're working in, but once the employees walk out the door, you can't control what they're doing. So that's some hesitancy that I'm seeing, is that people are nervous because they're managers to employees, and then employees to employees, they're losing that controlled environment that they've so been used to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about those that don't have to go, can't work remotely or never have, like those we were saying earlier, those industries that, it's not an office environment. They can't work remotely. I mean, you can't make widgets remotely. Why do they always use that example? I don't know. We could come up with so many other things. So they've probably, I wonder, has any of your clients changed their schedule for production employees over COVID? Has it always been the same? Always been the same. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. Robert, next question.
Well, I was just going to say, because I monopolize conversations, but I think the other thing to take in consideration is as a household, I have two adults that are having to reassess their work schedule and accommodate one another. And so all of a sudden, I have a partner who's traveling on a regular basis, all of a sudden. So now everything's kind of imploding at the same time. It's not just me reevaluating my work schedule and having to make accommodations to accommodate my work schedule. It's both of us. So now all of a sudden, because he's traveling, I have no one in the house for periods of time, and we had gotten used to him not traveling at all for work. So it's a big conversation. It's just not an individual conversation or myself and my employer conversation. It's bigger than that.
Absolutely. And and we talk about return to workplace, but for many, it's a different environment, right? So we're now looking at some employees who their return to workplace is going to be right where they are in their living room. So they're going to be working remotely. Maybe they're not going back to an office. How have you helped managers and those who are managing remote teams avoid the desire to overmanage, still be in contact and still make sure they're checking on their employees, but without, going overboard and managing those employees to the point that it kind of creates a bit of distance or distrust?
Helicopter managing or micromanaging, I guess is what, yeah. I think part of that goes back to what we were saying about the managers being intentional and purposeful about creating those check-ins and the engagement with employees versus putting in, I don't even know what they're called, when they put in the tracking software stuff. Yeah, that's not good. So it's like, you almost have to over communicate in a remote environment, and just make sure that the information that people need to be able to do their jobs is there. The information that the manager is looking for to feel comfortable that people are doing their jobs, I guess, is there. But it revolves around a lot around, I think, systems, processes, and communication are really what it comes down to there.
And I would throw in performance metrics, performance expectations, making those clear so that when they're met, then the leader can feel comfortable that the employee is doing what they're supposed to do. And so it's really a cycle of making sure that everybody's clear about what the expectation is and that there's some mechanism to gather the data to support that. And some people didn't take that approach pre-COVID, but they had to figure it out during COVID so that they could feel reassured as a leader that people were producing because they couldn't see them. And I think that will continue to be an important factor as we either are full remote or hybrid, that people are clear on the expectation and then clear on the metrics to make sure that the expectations are met.
Mm-hmm.
Well, team, that wraps up all of our questions for today. Are there any parting words, any words of wisdom that anyone would like to leave us with?
If you enjoyed this content today, go ahead and click like and subscribe.
That's what we were waiting for.
We're waiting for Sandra's. Actually, we do have a return to the workplace checklist for any small businesses that are looking at that approach, and if they are bringing people back, because it's not. I mean, I think the surveying the employee is, of course, the first step. Survey the workforce to get a general consensus of what it is that people are looking for, because I do think, it's a mix. Some people found their groove and they're loving the remote work environment, but there's other people that need or want that structure of going into a workplace, but then they also might like the flexibility. So, you can create a work environment that is pleasing to, different people, but then, there has to be policies and processes and systems created around whichever way you decide to go. And then there needs to be an understanding and like Candace was saying, some expectations around, okay, if you are hybrid, here are the fixed days there's like over communication of who's where and when. So that, so there's a lot of different things that come into play there. And of course we saw that Sandra mentioned in the beginning that easing employees' minds about coming into working with other people. How are they doing that? How are they preparing the environment? Are you talking to employees about what their concerns are and then addressing them? You have to tell people what's being done internally, and if they do start to feel uncomfortable, where can they go to talk about that and get some help. So anyway, all that to say, we have a really cool checklist that we can provide. I'll see if I can, maybe link it in here for people to download. But anyway.
I think it's also a great opportunity to piggyback on what you're saying, Deanna, to making sure that people know what resources are available. If the company does offer an EAP program, make sure that the employees are fully aware of that, because there will be a little bit of, there's going to be an adjustment curve when it comes to returning to work, and some people might struggle more than others. So just making sure that they have those resources is really important as well.
Yeah.
I also think you have to think of everything. So whether you start with a survey, then what does your communication to the staff look like? What do your emails look like? What do they contain? Who's the resources? Does the resource know everything? Is management on the same page? And even for some of our clients, what does your office posting look like? What is your posting that you're displaying to customers or clients visiting the workspace? So, we've had to create everything from the ground up for our different clients and make sure you're looking at this from all angles so that it is organized, prepared, and well thought out.
Yeah. That's why we're here. Call us. Hit the like button. Right? Is that what it is, Sandra? Subscribe.
Smash that like button.
Yeah. All right, Robert, I think we've run our course.
Well, again, thank you for joining the Employers Advantage team for our July live recording. I hope this content is helpful, and reach out to us. We're here for you, offering support and solutions in HR.